Being half white and half something else is hard, especially in the late 20th century before diversity was as celebrated as it is today. Societal pressure and peer judgment are no joke, and first-gen kids were often forced to choose America over everything else. But being half white and half Asian like myself in today's world, the culture and history of my Asian heritage is all I ever wished for. And now, Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. One of my earliest memories starts with me sobbing. I refused to be soothed no matter what Mom and Dad tried. Dad gave up and left the bedroom, but Mom took me into the kitchen and sat me down at the breakfast table. Can, she said, as she pulled a sheet of wrapping paper from on top of the fridge. She set the paper down, plain side, facing up, and began to fold it. I stopped crying and watched her, curious. She turned the paper over and folded it again. She pleated, packed, tucked, rolled, and twisted until the paper disappeared between her cupped hands. Then she lifted the folded up paper packet to her mouth and blew into it like a balloon. Can, she said. Lahu. She put her hands on the table and let go. A little paper tiger stood on the table. I reached out to Mom's creation and it pounced playfully at my finger. It growled, the sound somewhere between a cat and rustling newspaper. 这叫折纸, Mom said. This is called origami. At my request, Mom also made a goat, a deer, and a water buffalo out of wrapping paper. They would run around the living room while Lahu chased after them, growling. I didn't know this at the time, but Mom's origami was special. She breathed into them so that they shared her breath and thus moved with her life. This was her magic. When I was 10, Mark, one of the neighborhood boys, came over with his Star Wars action figures. Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber lit up and he could swing his arms and say in a tinny voice, "Use the Force." Together, we watched him repeat this motion 5 times on the coffee table. Can he do anything else? I asked. Mark was annoyed by my question. Look at all the details, he said. I looked at the details. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say. Mark was disappointed by my response. Show me your toys. I didn't have any toys, except my paper menagerie. I brought Lahu out from my bedroom. By then, he was very worn, patched all over with tape and glue, evidence of the years of repairs Mom and I had done on him. He was no longer as nimble and sure-footed as before. I sat him down on the coffee table. I could hear the skittering steps of the other animals behind in the hallway, timidly peeking into the living room. Xia Lahu, I said, and stopped. I switched to English. This is tiger. Mark examined Lahu. That doesn't look like a tiger at all. Your mom makes toys for you from trash? I had never thought of Lahu as trash, but looking at him now, he really was just a piece of wrapping paper. Lahu turned and pounced, knocking the plastic figure off the table. It hit the floor and broke, and Obi-Wan's head rolled under the couch. Rah! Lahu laughed. I joined him. Mark punched me. Hard. This was very expensive. You can't even find it in stores now. It probably costs more than what your dad paid for your mom. I stumbled and fell to the floor. Lahu growled and leapt at Mark's face. Mark screamed more out of fear and surprise than pain. Lahu was only made of paper, after all. Mark grabbed Lahu and his snarl was choked off as Mark crumpled him in his hand and tore him in half. He balled up the 2 pieces of paper and threw them at me. Here's your stupid, cheap Chinese garbage. After Mark left, I spent a long time trying, without success, to tape together the pieces, smooth out the paper, and follow the creases to refold Lahu. My fight with Mark didn't end there. Mark was popular at school. I never want to think about the next 2 weeks again. I came home that Friday at the end of the 2 weeks. 睡觉好吗? Mom asked. I said nothing and went to the bathroom. At dinner, I asked Dad, do I have a chink face? Dad put down his chopsticks. Even though I had never told him what happened in school, he seemed to understand. No, you don't. Mom looked at Dad, not understanding. She looked back at me. 啥叫 chink? English, I tried. Speak English. She tried. What happened? I pushed the chopsticks and the bowl before me away. Stir-fried green peppers with 5-spice beef. We should eat American food. Dad tried to reason. A lot of families cook Chinese sometimes. We're not other families. I looked at him. Other families don't have moms who don't belong. Mom turned to me. 不好吃 English, I said, raising my voice. Speak English. Mom reached out to touch my forehead, feeling for my temperature. Mashallah, I brushed her hand away. I'm fine. Speak English. I was shouting. Speak English to her. Dad said to Mom. You knew this was going to happen someday. What did you expect? I packed the paper menagerie in a large shoebox and shoved it into the corner of the attic as far away from my room as possible. If Mom spoke to me in Chinese, I refused to answer her. She tried to use more English, but her accent and broken sentences embarrassed me. Eventually, she stopped speaking altogether if I were around. Mom learned to cook American style. I played video games and studied French. She stopped making the animals when I was in high school. By then, her English was much better, but I was already at that age where I wasn't interested in what she had to say, whatever language she used. Sometimes, when I came home and saw her tiny body moving about in the kitchen, singing a song in Chinese to herself, it was hard for me to believe that she gave birth to me. We had nothing in common. Dad and I stood, one on each side of Mom lying on the hospital bed. She was not yet even 40, but she looked much older. For years, she had refused to go to the doctor for the pain inside her that she said was no big deal. By the time an ambulance finally carried her in, the cancer had spread far beyond the limits of surgery. My mind was not in the room. It was the middle of the on-campus recruiting season, and I was focused on resumes, transcripts, and strategically constructed interview schedules. She whispered something to Dad. He nodded and left the room. Jackie, if I don't make it, don't be too sad and hurt your health. Just keep that box you have with you, and every year at Qingming, take it out and think about me. I'll be with you always. Qingming was the Chinese festival for the dead. When I was very young, Mom used to write a letter on Qingming to her dead parents back in China. She would read the letter out loud to me, and then she would fold the letter into a paper crane and release it, facing west, towards the Pacific, towards China, towards the graves of Mom's family. It had been many years since I last did that with her. I don't know anything about the Chinese calendar, I said. Just rest, Mom. Dad came back and I said I needed to get to the airport early because I didn't want to miss my flight. She died when my plane was somewhere over Nevada. Dad aged rapidly after Mom died. The house was too big for him and had to be sold. My girlfriend Susan and I went to help him pack and clean the place. Susan found the shoebox in the attic. The paper menagerie hidden in the uninsulated darkness of the attic for so long had become brittle, and the bright wrapping paper patterns had faded. The paper animals did not move anymore. Perhaps whatever magic had animated them stopped when Mom died. It was the first weekend in April, 2 years after Mom's death, and I was home, lazily flipping through the TV channels. I paused at a documentary about sharks. Suddenly, I saw in my mind Mom's hands as they folded and refolded tinfoil to make a shark for me, while Lao Hu and I watched. A rustle. I looked up and saw that a ball of wrapping paper and torn tape was on the floor. The ball of paper shifted, unfurled itself, and I saw that it was Lao Hu, who I hadn't thought about in a very long time. Mom must have put him back together after I had given up. I sat down on the floor and laughed, stroking his back. Lao Hu got up, jumped with feline grace into my lap, and proceeded to unfold himself. In my lap was a square of creased wrapping paper, the plain side up. It was filled with dense Chinese characters. I had never learned to read Chinese, but I knew the characters for daughter, and they were at the top, where you'd expect them in a letter addressed to you, written in Mom's awkward, childish handwriting. I went to the computer to check the internet. Today was Qingming. I took the letter with me downtown where I knew the Chinese tour buses stopped. I stopped every tourist asking, 你会读中文吗? Can you read Chinese? A young woman agreed to help. We sat down on a bench together and she read the letter to me aloud. The language that I had tried to forget for years came back, and I felt the words sinking into me through my skin, through my bones, until they squeezed tight around my heart. Daughter, we haven't talked in a long time, so I decided to write to you. I'm going to write in the paper animals I made for you that you used to like so much. Because I have to write to you with all my heart, I need to write to you in Chinese. In America, I was lonely. Your father was kind and gentle with me, and I was very grateful to him, but no one understood me, and I understood nothing. But then you were born. I was so happy when I looked into your face and saw shades of my mother, my father, and myself. I had lost my entire family, everything I ever knew and loved, but there you were, and your face was proof to me that they were real. I hadn't made them up. When you said your first words to me in Chinese that had the same accent as my mother and me, I cried for hours. When I made the first zhe animals for you and you laughed, I felt that there were no worries in the world. I finally found a good life. I wished my parents could be here so that I could give them a good life too, but my parents were no longer around. You know what the Chinese think is the saddest feeling in the world? It's for a child to finally grow the desire to take care of his parents, only to realize that they're long gone. Daughter, I know that you do not like your Chinese eyes, which are my eyes. I know that you do not like your Chinese hair, which is my hair. But can you understand how much joy your very existence brought to me? And can you understand how it felt when you stopped talking to me and won't let me talk to you in Chinese? I felt I was losing everything all over again. Why won't you talk to me, daughter? The pain makes it hard to write. The young woman handed the paper back to me. I asked for her help in tracing out the character for I, love, on the paper below Mom's letter. I wrote the character again and again on the paper, intertwining my pen strokes with her words. The young woman reached out and put a hand on my shoulder. Then she got up and left, leaving me alone with my mother. Following the creases, I refolded the paper back into Lahu. I cradled him in the crook of my arm, and as he purred, we began the walk home.